My parents skipped my MIT graduation to watch my sister's ballet recital, only to realize later it was the day I cut them out of my life. When my cousin's wedding forced us into the same room 5 years later, they finally understood what they'd lost. I stood in my cap and gown on the lawn of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, scanning the crowd for faces I knew wouldn't be there. May 2018. The sun beat down on my shoulders, while hundreds of families celebrated around me, their cameras flashing, their voices carrying across campus in waves of pride and joy. My phone sat heavy in my pocket, the last message from my mother still glowing in my memory. Sweetie, we're so sorry, but Madison's recital got moved to today. We'll make it up to you. Congratulations. 22 years old. Summa cum laude in computer engineering, and I was completely alone. The ceremony ended. I collected my diploma with a smile plastered on my face while the dean shook my hand. Professor Williams, my thesis advisor, pulled me aside afterward with concern etched into the lines around his eyes. Your family couldn't make it, he asked. I shrugged, trying to appear casual. They had a conflict. He studied me for a long moment. You're one of the brightest students I've ever taught, Marianne. I hope you know that. I thanked him and walked back to my apartment through the Cambridge streets, still wearing my regalia. Tourists took photos. A homeless man congratulated me, but my phone stayed silent. That evening, I finally got the call. My mother's voice bubbled with enthusiasm. Madison was absolutely breathtaking. You should have seen her in that white tutu. Everyone said she was the star of the show. How was your little ceremony? My little ceremony. 4 years of sleepless nights, countless hours in the lab, a breakthrough in semiconductor design that had actual patent potential. But it was my little ceremony while Madison's community theater ballet recital was the event of the year. It was fine, I said flatly. Oh, good. Your father recorded the whole recital. Do you want me to send you the video? Something inside me cracked. No, Mom, I don't. Don't be like that, Marianne. You know how important dance is to Madison. You've always been so independent, so self-sufficient. You understand, right? I understood perfectly. I'd understood since I was 7 years old and missed my own birthday party because Madison had an emergency costume fitting. I'd understood when they skipped my high school award ceremony because Madison needed them at her dance competition in Ohio. I'd understood when they refused to help with my college application fees because Madison's private lessons were expensive. But they somehow found money for a new car when Madison turned 16 while I took the bus. I have to go, I said. Wait, we'll visit soon, maybe next month. Sure, Mom, maybe next month. I hung up, then I blocked both their numbers. The next morning I blocked them on every social media platform. I changed my email. When they tried to reach me through my old college roommate, Jenny, I asked her to tell them I needed space. What I didn't tell anyone was that the space would be permanent. My Uncle Robert, my father's brother, was the only family member whose contact information I kept. He'd always been different from the rest of them. Quieter, more observant. He'd sent me a card for graduation with a check inside and a note that said, I'm proud of you, kiddo. I always have been. Through Uncle Robert, I heard fragments of how my disappearance played out at home. Apparently, my parents didn't even realize I was seriously upset for the first 3 weeks. They thought I was busy with job hunting. By the time they understood I wasn't responding at all, they tried to play it off as me being dramatic. She'll come around, my father apparently said. Marianne's always been moody, but I didn't come around. I took a position at a tech company in Seattle, 3,000 transfers from my hometown of Richmond, Virginia. The salary was ridiculous, more money than my parents made combined. I threw myself into work, into building a life where my achievements mattered to someone other than just me. Years passed. I got promoted, then promoted again. By 2023, at 27, I was a senior engineer with my name on 3 patents and a reputation in the industry. I bought a modern apartment overlooking Puget Sound. I dated a software architect named Marcus for 2 years before we amicably split. I made friends who actually showed up for my birthday dinners and celebrated my wins without jealousy or dismissal. I built a life that was entirely, completely mine. Uncle Robert kept me loosely updated on family news, though I never asked. Madison had apparently given up ballet after high school, which struck me as darkly ironic. She'd married young to some guy named Tyler, worked as a receptionist at a dental office, and from what Robert said, seemed content enough. My parents still lived in the same house, still moved through the same routines. They asked about me sometimes, he said, but with a strange detachment, as if I were a distant relative they barely remembered, rather than their oldest daughter. Then, in January 2023, Uncle Robert called with news. My son Derek is getting married in June. He said, "Big wedding, the whole family invited. I know you've been keeping your distance, Marianne, but I'd really like you there." Derek specifically asked me to reach out. He always looked up to you. I remember Derek as a gangly kid obsessed with video games. How old is he now? 24. Marrying his college sweetheart, Amanda. She's lovely. I hesitated. 5 years was a long time. Part of me had healed in that time, built enough distance that maybe I could handle a single day in the same space as my parents. "Will they be there?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Your parents?" "Yes, Madison and Tyler too." Robert's voice softened. "But it's a big wedding, Marianne. Over 200 guests. You could probably avoid them pretty easily if you wanted to." "I'll think about it." But I already knew I was going to attend. Something had shifted in me over those 5 years. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger implied they still had power over me. Instead, I felt curious. I wanted to see them with these new eyes. These eyes that belonged to someone who built success without their approval or support. I RSVP'd. Yes. The months leading up to the wedding, I prepared myself mentally. I bought a dress that cost more than my parents' monthly mortgage payment, a sleek navy blue number that made me look every inch the successful tech professional I'd become. I booked a hotel room at the nicest place in Richmond. I arranged for a rental car, a Tesla, because why not? June arrived with humid Virginia heat. I flew into Richmond International the day before the wedding, checked into my hotel, and spent the evening reminding myself that I was doing this for Derek, not for any dramatic confrontation. The wedding was at a historic estate outside the city, all manicured gardens and white columns. I arrived exactly on time, blending into the crowd of guests. The ceremony was scheduled for 4:00 in the afternoon, with a reception to follow. I spotted my parents almost immediately. They'd aged more than I expected. My father's hair had gone mostly gray, and my mother had put on weight. They stood near the garden entrance with Madison and her husband, a stocky man with a goatee who kept checking his phone. Madison looked tired, older than her, 25 years, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. They hadn't seen me yet. I made my way to the opposite side of the garden, finding a seat toward the back for the ceremony. Derek and Amanda exchanged vows under an arch covered in roses, and I felt genuinely happy for them. Uncle Robert gave a touching speech about love and partnership that made several guests tear up. The reception began. I congratulated Derek and Amanda in the receiving line. "Marianne, you made it." Derek pulled me into a hug. "Dad said you might come, but I wasn't sure." "God, it's been forever." "You're all grown up," I said, smiling. "Congratulations to both of you." Amanda, a petite woman with kind eyes, squeezed my hand. "Derek talks about you all the time. He says, 'You're like a genius or something.'" "Hardly, but I do all right." I moved through the line and into the reception hall, accepting a glass of champagne from a passing waiter. The room was beautiful. Chandeliers, round tables with white linens, a live band setting up in the corner. I found my assigned seat at a table with some of Derek's college friends from where my immediate family was sitting. For the first hour, I successfully avoided any interaction. I chatted with the college friends, learned about their lives, shared edited highlights from mine. We ate dinner, filet mignon, and roasted vegetables. The band started playing. People moved to the dance floor. Then my mother appeared at my elbow. "Marianne?" Her voice cracked slightly. "Is that really you?" I turned slowly, keeping my expression neutral. "Hi, Mom." She looked like she might cry. "We didn't know you'd be here. Why didn't you tell us you were coming?" I RSVP to Derek and Amanda. This is their day. My father materialized beside her, his face a mixture of confusion and something that might have been guilt. "You look different. Older. It's been 5 years. People age." Madison hung back, watching with wide eyes. She'd always been good at reading the temperature of a room, at knowing when to stay quiet. 5 years. My mother repeated, Marianne, we've tried to reach you. We've called, sent emails. I know. Then why didn't you respond? Do you have any idea how much you've hurt us? The audacity of that sentence nearly made me laugh. How much I've hurt you. We're your parents. You can't just disappear from our lives because of some silly grudge. There it was, the complete lack of understanding even after 5 years of silence that should have screamed volumes. A silly grudge? I echoed. Is that what you think this is about? My father shifted uncomfortably. Look, we know you were upset about graduation, but Madison's recital was a community theater performance that you could have seen any night that week. They did 5 shows. I kept my voice level conversational. Several people at nearby tables were starting to glance over. My MIT graduation happened once. You've always been so independent, my mother said, falling back on her usual defense. Madison needed us more. She's sensitive, and you're so strong. I was your daughter, too. I am your daughter, and you spent my entire life acting like I was an afterthought. The words came out calm, almost clinical. Every birthday, every achievement, every moment that should have been about me got overshadowed by whatever Madison needed that day. Madison flinched. Marianne, I never asked them to. I know you didn't. This isn't about you, Madison. It's about them. I looked at my parents, really looked at them, and felt nothing but a distant sadness. You skipped my 7th birthday party for your costume fitting. You missed my high school graduation where I was valedictorian because you had a dance competition in Columbus. You refused to help with my college applications but bought you a car when you turned 16. And then when I achieved something genuinely incredible, you couldn't even show up for 3 hours. We sent you money, my father said weakly. I didn't need money. I had scholarships and student jobs. I needed my parents. The silence stretched between us. Around the reception, life continued. People laughing, dancing, celebrating. We were a small island of dysfunction in the sea of joy. What do you want from us? My mother finally asked. An apology? Fine. I'm sorry. We're sorry. Can we move past this now? I don't want anything from you. The truth of it settled over me like a comfortable blanket. I stopped wanting anything from you 5 years ago. I came here for Derek because he asked me to, because he matters to me. You don't get to corner me at a wedding and demand emotional resolution because it's convenient for you now. That's not fair, my mother whispered. Neither is spending 22 years making your child feel invisible. I walked away, leaving them standing by the bar. My hands weren't shaking. My voice hadn't wavered. I felt almost eerily calm as I made my way back to my table, finished my champagne, and asked one of Derek's friends to dance. Uncle Robert found me during a slow song. I saw that, he said quietly as we swayed to the music. You handled it better than I expected. I've had 5 years to process everything. They've had 5 years to realize what they lost and apparently learned nothing. For what it's worth, your father asked me about you last Christmas. Wanted to know if you were okay, if you were happy. Robert smiled sadly. I told him you were thriving. He looked surprised. Of course he was surprised. He never thought I'd actually survive without their approval. The song ended. Robert squeezed my shoulder. I'm proud of you, Marianne. Not just for your career, for this, for knowing your worth. The rest of the reception passed in a blur. I danced with Derek, congratulated Amanda's parents, ate a slice of wedding cake. My parents kept their distance, though I caught my mother staring at me several times from across the room. Madison approached once while I was freshening up in the ladies' room. I'm sorry, she said to my reflection, for all of it. I was a kid for most of it, but I should have noticed. I should have said something. I turned to face her. You were the golden child. That wasn't your fault. But you're an adult now, and you've watched them erase me from family photos, talk about me like I'm some cautionary tale. Have you ever defended me? Ever told them they were wrong? She looked at the floor. I didn't want to cause drama. That's what I thought. I left her there and returned to the reception. An hour later, I said my goodbyes to Derek and Amanda, hugged Uncle Robert, and drove back to my hotel in the Tesla that cost more than my parents earned in 6 months. The next morning, I had breakfast at the hotel restaurant, Eggs Benedict, and fresh coffee while scrolling through work emails. My flight back to Seattle left at 2. I was checking out of the hotel when my phone rang with an unknown local number. Against my better judgment, I answered. But first, let me tell you what those 5 years without them had actually looked like. The years I'd spent building myself into someone they wouldn't recognize. After graduation, Seattle had welcomed me with rain and opportunity. My first apartment was a studio in Capitol Hill, small but mine. I'd furnished it slowly, deliberately, each piece chosen because I wanted it, not because it matched some family aesthetic or met someone else's approval. A vintage leather chair from a thrift store, a desk facing the window where I could watch the city wake up while I coded, plants that I somehow managed not to kill, their green leaves proof that I could nurture something successfully. Work consumed me those first 2 years, but in the best possible way. I wasn't running from anything anymore. I was running towards something. The semiconductor project I'd started at MIT caught the attention of my department head, Elena Rodriguez, a woman in her 50s who fought her own battles in tech. She took me under her wing, taught me how to navigate corporate politics, how to claim credit for my ideas in meetings where men twice my age tried to talk over me. "You're brilliant," Elena told me one evening when we were both working late. "But brilliance isn't enough in this industry. You have to be strategic. You have to make yourself impossible to ignore." I learned by my second year I was leading projects. By my third, I was filing patents. The work was challenging in ways that felt productive rather than destructive. Problems that had solutions if you were smart enough and persistent enough to find them. My personal life filled with people who actually showed up. There was Rachel, my neighbor, who became my best friend over shared takeout and terrible reality TV. We'd sit on her balcony drinking wine, and she'd tell me about her chaotic Italian family who drove her crazy, but loved her fiercely. I'd listen and feel that old ache, not jealousy exactly, but a quiet grief for what I'd never had. "Your family really doesn't call at all?" Rachel asked me once. "They can't. I blocked them." "Damn, what did they do?" I told her the abbreviated version, the misgraduation, the lifetime of being second place. She'd gotten quiet, then hugged me hard. "Their loss," she said. "Seriously, you're like annoyingly accomplished. If you were my sister, I'd brag about you constantly." Those words meant more than she probably knew. There were other friends, too. Jordan from my kickboxing class, who taught me that physical strength could be a metaphor for emotional resilience. Priya from work, who invited me to Diwali celebrations with her family and made me feel welcome in their warmth. These people chose me, and I chose them back, building a family of intention rather than obligation. The dating was harder. Marcus and I had met at a tech meetup, bonded over our mutual love of obscure programming, languages, and Korean food. He was kind, stable, everything that should have worked. But 2 years in, during a conversation about future plans, he'd mentioned wanting kids someday and how important family traditions were to him. "What about your family traditions?" he'd asked. "Would you want to incorporate those?" I'd frozen. I don't have family traditions. Everyone has something. Holiday rituals, birthday celebrations. "Marcus, I don't talk to my family at all, and I don't plan to change that." He tried to understand, really tried. But eventually the lack of in-laws, the absence of that whole dimension of life became a problem he couldn't quite reconcile. We'd split amicably, both acknowledging we wanted different futures. After Marcus, I dated casually. A lawyer named Tom, who was too obsessed with his career. A teacher named Scott, who was too eager to fix me as if I were broken rather than intentionally reconstructed. A startup founder named Alex, who ghosted me after 3 dates, which honestly felt appropriate for Seattle's dating scene. I threw myself deeper into work. The patents started piling up. Innovations in chip design, improvements to processing efficiency. Each one had my name on it. Marianne Mitchell, not Marianne Mitchell, daughter of Robert and Claire, not Marianne Mitchell, sister of Madison. Just Marianne Mitchell, engineer. My salary climbed. The studio apartment became a 1-bedroom. The 1-bedroom became the 2-bedroom with the water view. I bought art, real art, from local galleries, not prints from Target. I traveled alone to Tokyo, to Berlin, to Barcelona, sending postcards to Uncle Robert and photos to Rachel. My passport filled with stamps, evidence that I was living fully in this life I'd built. But there were hard nights too. Nights when I'd see a father-daughter moment in a movie and feel that familiar hollow ache. Nights when I'd remember being 7 years old, watching through a window as my family celebrated without me because I wasn't important enough to wait for. Nights when I wondered if something was fundamentally wrong with me, if I was unlovable in some essential way. Therapy helped. Dr. Sandra Chen's office became a sanctuary every Tuesday evening. She never pushed me toward reconciliation, never suggested that forgiveness was mandatory for healing. Instead, she helped me understand that my parents' choices reflected their limitations, not my worth. "You were a child who deserved unconditional love," Dr. Chen said during one session. "The fact that you didn't receive it is a failure of their capacity, not your value." Those words became a mantra during the difficult moments. By year 4, something shifted. The grief lessened. The anger transformed into something closer to indifference. I realized days would pass without thinking about my parents at all. My life had become so full of genuine connections, meaningful work, and personal growth that the absence of their presence stopped feeling like a wound and started feeling like simply the way things were. I remembered a conversation with Elena around that time. We were celebrating my 3rd patent approval with champagne in her office. "You know what I admire about you?" Elena had said, "You turned pain into fuel. A lot of people with your background would have imploded. You built an empire instead. I don't know about empire, Marianne. Look at what you've accomplished in 4 years. You're 26 years old with 3 patents, leading a team of engineers twice your age, making more money than most people see in a lifetime. That's an empire." She'd raised her glass. "And you did it without anyone's help. That's even more impressive." The validation from someone I respected deeply meant everything. Elena saw me, really saw me, in ways my parents never had. So by the time Derek's wedding invitation arrived, I wasn't the wounded 22-year-old who'd walked across that graduation stage alone. I was someone else entirely, someone stronger, someone whole. That's who showed up to Richmond that June day. Not the daughter desperately seeking approval, but the woman who'd learned she didn't need it. Against my better judgment, I answered the phone. "Marianne," my father's voice. "Don't hang up, please. How did you get this number?" "Robert gave it to me. Just listen for 1 minute." I stayed silent, waiting. "I saw you yesterday at the wedding, and I barely recognized you. You look so polished, so successful." "Robert told me about your patents, your position at the company. He showed me an article about you in some tech magazine." His voice grew thick. "I realized I didn't know any of that. I don't know anything about your life." "No, you don't. Your mother and I talked last night after the wedding. Really talked. And we started looking back at everything. All the times we chose Madison over you. We always thought we were doing the right thing, giving more attention to the child who needed it more. But we forgot that you needed us too. I'm not having this conversation. You turned out so well, better than we ever imagined, and we had nothing to do with it." The admission hung in the air between us. I could hear him breathing, waiting for me to absolve him, to say it was okay, to offer forgiveness. "You're right," I said finally. "You had nothing to do with it. I did this alone, and I'll continue doing it alone. Marianne, I don't hate you. I don't even feel angry anymore. But I also don't feel anything else. You're strangers who share my DNA, and that's all you'll ever be." I paused, making sure my words were clear. "Seeing you yesterday confirmed what I've known for 5 years. I made the right choice when I walked away. I'm happier without you in my life. There has to be something we can do, some way to fix this. You can't fix 22 years of neglect with one conversation. You can't erase the fact that my MIT graduation, the proudest moment of my life, is forever tainted by your absence. You made your choices. Now I've made mine. Will we ever hear from you again?" I thought about it honestly, maybe at funerals, maybe at other weddings if Uncle Robert asks me. But no, you won't hear from me. I won't send Christmas cards or birthday wishes. I won't call on Mother's Day or Father's Day. You wanted to prioritize Madison's needs over mine for 2 decades. Well, now you get to live with the consequences of that choice. Your mother is devastated. She'll survive. She's strong and independent, remember? That's what she always said about me. But I didn't need her. Turns out she was right. I ended the call and blocked the number. On the flight back to Seattle, I thought about the little girl I used to be. The one who tried so hard to earn her parents' attention, who believed that if she just achieved enough, excelled enough, succeeded enough, they'd finally see her. I grieved for that little girl. She deserved better. But the woman I'd become, she was doing just fine. Monday morning, I walked into my office with its view of the Space Needle and the Sound, grabbed my first coffee of the day, and dove into a new project that would eventually become my most successful patent yet. My colleague Jennifer stopped by my desk around noon. "How was the wedding?" she asked. "Interesting. Saw some family I hadn't seen in years. Good interesting or bad interesting? Necessary interesting?" She laughed and invited me to happy hour on Friday. I agreed, already looking forward to it, to the easy friendships I cultivated, to the life I built brick by brick without my parents' help or approval. That evening, Uncle Robert sent me a text. "Your father called me. Said you spoke this morning." He sounded lost. "Your mother is apparently going through old photo albums and crying. Just thought you should know." I typed back, "Thanks for letting me know, but it doesn't change anything." I didn't think it would. Still proud of you, kiddo. Over the following weeks, I heard through Robert that my parents had entered what he called the mourning phase. They'd removed Madison from her pedestal, apparently, which caused its own family drama. Madison felt attacked. Tyler felt caught in the middle. My parents cycled through anger at me for being unreasonable, anger at themselves for their choices, and a desperate sadness that Robert said was difficult to witness, but I felt none of it. I was insulated by 3,000 payments and 5 years of hard-won emotional distance. In August, my company sent me to a tech conference in Boston. I had a free afternoon, so I drove to Cambridge and walked around MIT's campus. Students hurried past with backpacks, their faces bright with ambition and exhaustion. I stood on the lawn where I once received my diploma alone and took a photo of the view. That night, I posted it on my Instagram, the first photo I'd posted in months. Caption: 5 years ago, I graduated from here and started building a life I actually wanted. Best decision I ever made. The post got over 300 likes from colleagues, friends, and former classmates. People I'd gone to MIT with commented their congratulations and pride. One former lab partner wrote, "You've always been an inspiration. Remember that time you debugged that impossible code at 3 a.m.? You were unstoppable then, and you're unstoppable now." I smiled at my phone screen, feeling genuinely content. Uncle Robert called a few days later. "Your mother saw your Instagram post. She's not following you, but Madison showed it to her. She cried for an hour." "Robert, I appreciate you keeping me updated, but you don't have to tell me these things anymore. Their feelings aren't my responsibility." Fair enough. Just wanted to make sure you knew they're finally understanding what they lost. They didn't lose me. They never really had me. The truth of that statement echoed long after the call ended. My parents had been physically present for my childhood, but emotionally absent for everything that mattered. They provided food, shelter, and basic necessities while withholding the one thing a child needs most: to feel seen, valued, and prioritized. I'd spent 5 years learning to see, value, and prioritize myself. Their sudden realization that they'd failed me didn't undo the work I'd done to heal. In October, Derek and Amanda announced they were expecting a baby. Uncle Robert hosted a family gathering to celebrate, and he called to invite me. I politely declined. "My parents will be there," I said. "They will, but Marianne, Derek really wants you in his life. Amanda does too. Are you going to let your parents dictate which family events you can attend?" He had a point. Let me think about it. I thought about it for 3 days, then called Derek directly. Uncle Robert said, "You want me at the celebration?" "I do. You're basically my cool older cousin who inspired me to aim high. I want my kid to know you." His sincerity hit me square in the chest. "Okay, I'll come, but I need you to understand something. I'm not there to reconcile with my parents. I'm there for you and Amanda. If they approach me, I'll be civil, but that's it. That's all I'm asking." The gathering was smaller than the wedding, maybe 40 people at Uncle Robert's house. I arrived late deliberately, slipping in after most guests had already arrived. I found Derek and Amanda in the backyard, congratulated them, and spent most of the afternoon talking with Robert's wife, Margaret, who'd always been kind to me. My parents stayed on the other side of the yard. Madison approached once, asking how I was doing, and I gave her the polite, distant answers you'd give an acquaintance. She didn't push for more. As the sun started setting and I prepared to leave, my mother intercepted me near the front door. "I'm glad you came," she said. "It means a lot to Derek. Derek is the reason I'm here. Can we talk? Really talk? Not at a wedding or a party, but somewhere private." "To what end, Mom? To try? To see if there's any way forward?" I studied her face, searching for manipulation or selfishness, but found only genuine desperation. Still, desperation wasn't enough. "I don't think there is a way forward. You want absolution. You want me to say it's okay, that we can start over, that the past doesn't matter, but I can't give you that." I adjusted my purse on my shoulder. "What you can do is learn from this. Derek's baby will be here in 6 months. You have another chance to be better grandparents than you were parents. Take it." Her eyes filled with tears. "So, that's it. We just never have a relationship again. We never really had one to begin with." I left her standing in the doorway and drove back to my hotel. The next morning before my flight, I had breakfast with Uncle Robert one last time. "You're handling this with remarkable grace," he said over pancakes. "I don't feel graceful. I feel tired." Tired of what? Tired of being expected to fix what they broke. Tired of being made to feel guilty for protecting my peace. Tired of people thinking that biology obligates me to forgive the unforgivable? Robert nodded slowly. "You don't owe anyone forgiveness, Marianne. Not even your parents. Especially not your parents." Those words settled into my bones like a benediction. Back in Seattle, life continued its forward motion. I dated a marine biologist named Kyle for a few months before realizing we wanted different things. I adopted a cat named Tesla who slept on my keyboard during video calls. I got promoted again, this time to director of engineering, with a salary that would have made 22-year-old me weep with disbelief. Years passed. Derek's baby, a girl named Sophie, arrived healthy and perfect. Robert sent photos. I'd given him permission for that much. Madison got divorced, moved back in with my parents for a while, then eventually found her footing with a job at a real estate office. My parents aged. Robert mentioned my father's diabetes diagnosis, my mother's knee surgery. I felt a flicker of concern, but nothing deeper. They were elderly strangers with medical problems, no different from reading about someone in the news. In 2025, now 29 years old, I gave a keynote speech at a Women in Technology conference in San Francisco. The audience was over 1,000 people. I spoke about resilience, about building success without a support system, about the importance of knowing your worth, even when the people who should value you most don't. The standing ovation lasted nearly 5 minutes. Afterward, a young woman approached me with tears streaming down her face. She couldn't have been more than 25. "Thank you," she whispered. "My family doesn't support my tech career. They think I should be a teacher or a nurse, something more traditional. Hearing you speak made me feel less alone." I hugged her, this stranger who understood. "You're not alone, and their inability to see your potential says everything about them and nothing about you." She nodded, wiping her eyes. "How did you do it? How did you let go of needing their approval?" I realized that waiting for their approval meant putting my life on hold. So I stopped waiting and started living. The advice I gave her was advice I'd lived by for 7 years. It had served me well. That night in my hotel room, I scrolled through my Instagram and saw that Madison had recently posted a photo of our parents with Sophie. The caption read, "3 generations of love." I wasn't in the photo. Obviously, I wasn't part of their narrative anymore. The old me, the 7-year-old who missed her birthday party, would have felt crushed by the exclusion. The current me simply scrolled past without reaction. I posted my own photo from the conference. Me on stage, mid-speech, with a massive audience visible. Caption: "Spoke to 10,000 brilliant women today about resilience and self-worth. Honored to share my story and theirs." The photo got over 500 likes. Colleagues, friends, and former classmates commented their pride and support. One comment stopped me. It was from Jenny, my old MIT roommate. "Remember when we graduated and you were so alone? Look at you now, surrounded by people who actually appreciate you. You've built an empire, Marianne. I'm in awe." I liked her comment and replied with a heart emoji. Then I closed Instagram, ordered room service, and watched a documentary about deep sea creatures while eating overpriced hotel pasta. My phone rang around 10 o'clock. Uncle Robert, bit late for a call. I answered. Everything okay? Your father had a heart attack this afternoon. He's stable now in the hospital in Richmond. Your mother wanted me to tell you. I sat up straighter. Is he going to be okay? Doctors think so. But Marianne, he's asking for you. The request hung in the air like a challenge. 7 years had passed since I cut contact. 7 years of building a life without them, of healing from wounds they'd inflicted through careless neglect. And now, at the first sign of mortality, they wanted me back. I can't, I said quietly. I'm not asking you to, just relaying the message. What do they expect? That I'll rush to his bedside and we'll have some deathbed reconciliation? Maybe that's exactly what they expect. Well, they're going to be disappointed again. I leaned back against the hotel headboard. He's going to recover, right? That's what the doctors say. Then he'll be fine without me there. He's been fine without me for 7 years. Robert sighed. I'll let them know. After we hung up, I sat in the dark hotel room and examined my feelings carefully. Guilt? No. Sadness? Perhaps a little, but more for what could have been than what was. Relief? Mostly that. I didn't go to Richmond. I sent flowers to the hospital with a card that said, "Simply wishing you a speedy recovery. Professional, distant, appropriate for someone I barely knew." My mother called Robert, furious that I'd sent flowers instead of appearing in person. Apparently, my father cried when he saw them, not from gratitude, but from grief. Madison called me a heartless monster on Facebook in a post she later deleted. Their reactions confirmed I'd made the right choice, because here's what they never understood. Cutting them out wasn't about punishing them. It was about protecting myself. It was about refusing to spend the rest of my life auditioning for their love, hoping that this time, this achievement, this moment would finally be enough to earn their attention. I'd stopped auditioning 7 years ago. I'd stopped performing. I'd simply started living. And the life I built was extraordinary, precisely because they weren't in it. Constantly reminding me I wasn't Madison, wasn't worth their time, wasn't quite good enough to matter. My father recovered. Life continued. I stayed in Seattle, thrived in my career, dated a photographer named Daniel, who made me laugh and respected my boundaries. The relationship was easy, healthy, everything my family dynamics had never been. On the 7-year anniversary of my MIT graduation, I posted a long caption on Instagram about everything that day had meant to me. I wrote about standing alone in my cap and gown, about the little ceremony my parents couldn't be bothered to attend, about how that day had become the beginning of my actual life instead of the end of my college career. The post went viral. Over 10,000 likes, hundreds of shares, thousands of comments from people sharing their own stories of family rejection and survival. News outlets picked it up. I did several interviews about family estrangement and the pressure to forgive people who've hurt you simply because they're related to you. My parents saw it all. According to Robert, they were mortified by the public nature of my discussion, humiliated that people knew what they'd done. Madison called it airing dirty laundry. My father apparently told Robert that I was making them look like monsters. Are they monsters? Robert asked me during one of our now monthly calls. No, they're just people who consistently chose wrong and refused to fully accept the consequences. Monsters would be easier. I could hate monsters, but I can't hate them. I can only protect myself from them. My emotional clarity had taken years to achieve, but it was absolute. Now, in 2025, 7 years after that lonely graduation day, I live in a beautiful apartment with Daniel and our cat. I have work that fulfills me, patents with my name on them, and a reputation as someone who fights for overlooked talent in the tech industry. I mentor young women in engineering, particularly those from unsupportive families, because I understand their struggle intimately. My parents are alive, but absent from my narrative. Madison exists on the periphery, someone I might see at funerals someday. Uncle Robert remains my sole connection to that past life, and I treasure his presence in my current one. People sometimes ask if I regret cutting my parents out. They want me to admit that I've lost something valuable, that family is irreplaceable, that blood matters most. But I haven't lost anything. I've gained everything: self-respect, peace, success, without their shadow over it. They lost a daughter who would have moved mountains to earn their pride. They lost patents with their last name attached, grandchildren they might have had, if I ever felt secure enough to start a family, a relationship with someone who turned out pretty extraordinary, despite their complete lack of support. 7 years ago, they made a choice to skip my MIT graduation for a ballet recital that didn't matter. They probably don't even remember the details of Madison's performance that day, but I remember everything about mine: the weight of the diploma in my hand, the empty seats in the family section, the moment I decided I was done begging for crumbs of their attention. That was the day I cut them out. They just didn't realize it until much, much later. And by then, it was far too late to matter.